Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Empire State Development's Division of Minority and Women's Business Development, MWBE webinar series. Today's topic is effective government bid pricing. My name is Caitlin Covert, Business Development Associate at Empire State Development. I have two wonderful guests here with us today, Jenny Kelley and Laura Miller from the IgniteU New York Procurement Technical Assistance Center. However, before we begin, let's take care of some housekeeping issues. We've already muted your phone so participants do not hear a lot of background noise during the presentation. This webinar is being recorded. The recording, as well as the presentation, will be emailed to all registrants. We encourage you to ask questions through the chat and Q&A boxes. Lastly, there will be a quick poll displayed following the presentation. We welcome and encourage any feedback. And without further ado, I introduce you all to Jenny and Laura.
Hi, Caitlin. Thanks for having us. We always love working with our partners at ESD. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Kelley, and I am a procurement counselor at the IgniteU New York PTAC. Here on your screen is some contact information, but it will also be on the last slide as well. Here's an overview of our presentation today. I will briefly talk about the IgniteU New York PTAC and what PTACs do in general. I will then dive into the main subject that we will be talking about today, contract pricing. I will discuss what to look for when looking at a proposal, including how should you be structuring your bid. We will then take a look at some actual bids that went out for competition, and we will see the prices that came back and talk about those differences. All of this is to get you thinking. When you're looking at a proposal, and you're thinking about pricing, what do you need to consider? How do you set baselines for your pricing? And is it realistic for your business to even go after? Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. And if there's time at the end of the presentation, we can answer them. Or I will also be providing my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me following the presentation. And if we don't get around to asking all the questions, I will answer them offline and send the answers to everyone listening to the webinar today. Here's a little bit about the PTAC, or Procurement Technical Assistance Center. We are a part of the PTAP, or Procurement Technical Assistance Program. PTACs were authorized by Congress in 1985. The program is administered by the Defense Logistics Agency, which is part of the Department of Defense. PTACs provide procurement technical assistance to help businesses sell their products or services to the appropriate government agency by offering confidential one-on-one counseling at no cost. Whether it is federal, state, local, or military contracts, we can help you navigate the government contracting world. Every PTAC has a nonprofit that acts as a host organization. The IgniteU New York PTAC's host organization is NYS, a nonprofit technology consulting company with offices located in Rome, Troy, Albany, and New York City. The IgniteU New York PTAC was formed in October of 2020 and services a 17-county area in the Mohawk Valley and Capital Regions. We are one of 7 PTACs that service New York State. So if your business is located outside of our territory, we can direct you to the PTAC that services your area. Once you sign up as a client at no cost, we provide counseling via workshops, webinars, government to business matchmakers, and one-on-one counseling assistance. That assistance includes helping get certain registrations and certifications, such as registered on sam.gov, or getting federal women-owned small business certified, or becoming a New York State certified service-disabled veteran-owned business. We can set you up with our bid match service as well. What this is we collect your keywords, your NAICS or your North American Industry Classification System codes, and product and service codes, which are used to classify your business, and then we put them into our computer algorithm system. This system then pulls from all the different bid boards any opportunities that pertain to your business and it will send you one consolidated email. The PTAC can also help you prepare your solicitation or bid by reviewing your submission and help you answer any questions you might have as it pertains to technical information and document specifications and standards. Likewise, we can help you identify what government entities would buy what you sell and also connect you to subcontracting opportunities. So, to jump into the effective government bid pricing presentation, I would like to start off with a polling question to gauge the group's familiarity with bid pricing strategies. So I will go ahead and launch this first poll. Looks like people are answering. We're getting a wide range of answers. I'll go ahead and end the poll in 3, 2, 2.5, 1. So it looks like we have a wide range of answers today. But if you're a novice and you don't know anything about pricing strategy, or you've been on a couple proposals before, this webinar will definitely help you with your pricing strategy and get you some more winning proposals. Share poll results. So something to take away is when it comes to pricing, it is more of an art than a science. While numbers and math are critical to accurate pricing, the art of strategy used in developing prices can result in a winning or losing contract. Companies need to know the market, their competitors, and current economic conditions, which is a top-down strategy, as well as know their costs to perform the work, a bottom-up strategy. Pricing for profitability requires a hybrid approach to pricing from both a top-down and bottom-up perspectives. As a business owner, it is at your discretion to raise or lower prices or to find ways to perform the work at a lower cost, all in an effort to maximize your profits. So, pricing can be an all-day class, but I've condensed it down to fit in our hour together. So we will keep things relatively simple for today's presentation, but you'll get a baseline understanding. So when you start to look for and go after government contracts, you will know what you're seeing and can appropriately price your bids. So the first is in government contracting, there's always an alphabet soup of acronyms. So here are some common contract terminology. Many of you have seen what is called a request for quote or RFQ. More likely than not, when this is awarded, it will be awarded based on price. This is much the same as when you see an invitation for bid or a sealed bid. You'll see these in construction projects. Now, if you're responding to a request for proposal, an RFP, those are not awarded strictly based on price. They're awarded based on best value, which we'll talk about later in a couple slides. If you're going after an invitation for bid, where price is the #1 factor, it may affect how you determine your pricing for the project. However, if you're going after a request for proposal, your pricing strategy can be a little different because the contracting agency is looking for the best value. One thing that can help you with your pricing and also developing your business is a program at both the state and federal levels. You might see sources sought or requests for information posted from time to time. If you see these and they are looking for products or services that you sell, review the requirements to see if that might be a good fit for your business. Many times, these agencies are building their list of potential awardees, not based solely on sources sought, but they get an idea of who's interested. And one thing that New York State does is discretionary spending. It's for $50,000 and below. They use a bridge procurement process. So many times when you see a sources sought or request for information where the agency isn't buying a product or service right now. They're looking for input from industries as far as who can support that type of contract. So they'll see, is it a small business, minority or women-owned business enterprise, service disabled veteran-owned business. They do this because they might receive a lot of interest from, say, an MWBE business, and they might then want to focus those procurement efforts for their discretionary spending towards those types of businesses. Sources sought or requests for information can help you grow your business, but also help those contracting agencies reach their spend goals. So currently, New York State has designated 30% of contracts to go to minority or women-owned business enterprises, along with 6% to service-disabled veteran-owned businesses that are certified through New York State. So when you see a sources sought or request for information, responding to these is a good way to get your name out in front of that particular buyer. Usually they ask for a capability statement or just a listing of what you can do or your prices. So the government is using that info for market research and fact finding, but you can use this opportunity as a way to market yourself and get your name out there. So I would just like to stress again that sources sought and request for information is very important for growing your business. You can open up the dialogue and you're not restricted as much as in an RFP or RFQ. You can talk to not only the contracting officer, but in some instances, you can ask to speak to the program manager as well. Some things you will see within government contracting are different contract types. One that you might see and will be more prevalent with commodities and many services, especially at the state and local level, is firm fixed price. This is the type of contract in which the person buying a product or service pays the seller a fixed amount that does not vary, even if unexpected costs arise or additional resources are needed. If you look at risk scale in terms of who bears more risk in the contract, if it is a firm fixed price, you as a contractor bear the highest risk in the relationship. So remember in your pricing that if it is a firm fixed price, and especially if you're in a multi-year contract, you want to take a look at how you're bidding those to make sure you're accounting for changes that could happen. Cost reimbursement contracts aren't seen as much in state and local contracting, but this is very popular in federal contracting. This type of contract provides payment for allowable incurred costs to the extent prescribed in the contract. These contracts establish an estimate of total cost for the purpose of obligating funds and establishing a ceiling that the contractor may not exceed without the approval of the contracting officer. For a time and materials contract, you'll be reimbursed for the material costs and will also be paid a rate for the time worked on the job. Another type of contract that you're going to see a lot of when you're looking at bids and proposals is called an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ. An IDIQ contract fulfills reoccurring needs when the government cannot predetermine the precise times and or quantities of supplies or services that will be required during the contract period performance. They are awarding a contract so that anytime they need to buy that particular item, if it is a sole source, you would be the one awarding it to them. If it is multi-award, you're bidding amongst the awardees of the IDIQ to provide that service. Some examples of IDIQs are, if you're familiar with the GSA schedule system, or if you're familiar with the New York State OGS contracts, initially you aren't bidding for specific work, but bidding to get on a specific contract that usually is a longer term. So for instance, GSA is usually 5 years, but that may be renewed for three 5-year time periods, resulting in a 20-year contract if all renewals are executed. So when looking at criteria on how contracts are awarded, in general, it will either be awarded to the lowest price bid. When I say lowest price bid, I mean lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So what does responsive mean? It means, did you respond correctly to the solicitation? Did you send all your paperwork in? Did you send exactly what they needed? Was it on time? And responsible means, does a contracting officer feel you can do this contract successfully? And we'll take a closer look at what responsible means on the next slide. Or another award criteria would be based on best value contract. Best value takes your solution, your value add, the price, timeline, and they weigh each category differently. So it's really important to review those stipulations in the award criteria part of the contract because that will be really important and impact price. So you may not need the lowest price if you offer the best value. Lowest price is typically seen in RFQs and invitation to bids, whereas in RFPs, you will see most of the time the contracting officer looking for best value. So in the previous slide, it mentioned being the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So what does responsible even mean? It really is a legal definition. If you look at federal contracting, the definition would be located in FAR Part 9 of the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is a set of uniform policies and procedures for acquisition. In New York State, it's based upon existing legal precedents. Responsibility determinations involve a review of the following 4 major categories. So the first is integrity. Does the business entity possess the integrity to perform the contract? Factors to be considered include criminal indictments, criminal convictions, civil fines and injunctions imposed by government entities, antitrust investigations, ethical violations, tax delinquencies, debarment or suspension by a government entity, prior determinations of integrity related non-responsibility, etc. The second is past performance. So has the business entity performed at acceptable levels on other government contracts? Factors to be considered include reports of less than satisfactory performance, early contract termination for cause, contract abandonment, court determinations of breach of contract, etc. Now, some of you might be worrying, well, I don't have any past government contracts. Don't worry, that's fine. Companies have been awarded government contracts before, even if they didn't have any past performance. For instance, maybe they had other business contracts that would count towards their past performance. The third is legally capable. Is the business entity legally capable of performing the contract? Factors to be considered include authority to do business in New York State, any licensing, such as with the Education Department or Department of State, any debarment by the State Labor Department due to prevailing wage violation, etc. And then the fourth is financially and organizationally capable. Is the business entity financially and organizationally capable of performing the contract? Factors to be considered include assets, liabilities, recent bankruptcies, equipment, facilities, personnel, resources, and expertise, availability and consideration of other business commitments, existence of appropriate accounting and auditing procedures for control of property and funds, etc. So here's the crux of why we are here. I will break down the things you should be considering when you're looking at a proposal. You're factoring everything in and you're trying to figure out how to price it. One of the most important things when looking at the bid is understanding what the requirements call for. Once again, one of the most important things is understanding what the requirements call for. If you don't understand and you propose something that is wrong, you could be way off in your pricing, especially when it comes to labor, time, and materials. If you don't understand and just guess, this can make you unsuccessful. So remember, if something is unclear, ask. You can ask the contracting officer during the question and answer period, but also ask your local PTAC. We can review the bid and go over any questions or clarifications that you might have. So the first pricing factor to look at is prevailing wage, Fair Labor Standards Act, and Davis-Bacon Act requirements if they're attached to the bid. You need to pay attention to labor categories, read the requirements. This is telling you that you have minimum wages you will need to pay your workers. There could also be additional costs based on labor rates that need to be considered. For example, you can use a higher skilled labor, but that might throw off your pricing. So if you can do the job with a level 1 employee who will be less expensive, you could consider doing that to keep your prices down. Materials. If you are doing something where you are building something or providing a product, know if you can use brand name or generic. Does the bid call out very specific brand names? If they do, then you know what your costs have to be. But if they don't, and you can find a product that is an acceptable substitute that has the same form, fit, and function, then that can help bring your prices down. For example, say the government wants you to install air conditioners, and they don't tell you what kind they want, they just want them to work, then you have some leeway in your price structure. Another thing that can help you is know your internal costs. For smaller business, this might be tough because they might not think as in-depth when it comes to what goes into an hour of labor for one person. So you have labor rates, general and administrative, which are necessary to the overall operation of the business, such as professional fees, including legal, accounting, payroll processing fees, and IT services. Then you also have overhead costs, which are often referred to as contract support. So costs such as obtaining a security clearance for employees and a proportionate share for facilities costs such as rent and office supplies. You'll also need to know your insurances, internal supplies, profit, indirect costs such as fringe and PPE if necessary. So here's a nice little diagram to summarize the government approach to costs. At the base of the pyramid are the direct costs. So you have labor, materials, other direct costs. Then above direct costs are indirect costs. Typically, there will be payroll overhead and general and administrative expenses. Then depending on the structure of your business, an on-site overhead rate or an off-site overhead rate may be required. So let me get your attention here because I can't stress this enough. If there's a pre-bid meeting or a site visit, even if they are not mandatory, if you're going to bid, go. So once again, even though they might not be mandatory, attend a pre-bid meeting or site visit. Especially if they're going to let you do a walkthrough of the area, it can be really beneficial to see things than just reading about them on paper in a proposal. Another thing to look for in your requirements is shipping cost. FOB stands for freight on board or free on board. FOB origin means the transfer occurs as soon as the goods are safely on board the transport. FOB origin indicates that the sale is considered complete at the seller's shipping dock, and thus the buyer of the goods is responsible for freight costs and liability during transport. FOB destination means the transfer occurs the moment the goods are removed from the transport at the destination. FOB destination indicates the sale is complete at the buyer's doorstep and the seller is responsible for freight costs and liability during transport. Now, this is all important because if you're selling a commodity and it says FOB origin, you are not adding shipping costs to your price. And if you do, you'll be overpriced. Additionally, if you have subcontractors or suppliers who are not giving you the best price they can give you, You may want to build relationships with other companies that can give you better pricing. The better subcontractor or supplier pricing you are getting, the more competitive your bids are going to be. You will want flexibility also in your subcontracting partners, not only for pricing, but set-aside factors. In New York State, there are 3 separate subcontracting goals: WBE, or Women-Owned Business Enterprise, MBE, or Minority-Owned Business Enterprise, and Service-Disabled, Veteran-Owned Business goals. Right now, these goals make up 36% of subcontracting opportunities. And it should be noted that if you are an MWBE, you can't be both on a contract. You have to pick either MBE or WBE. Another thing to consider is travel for contract performance. If you are a company, say, in New York City, and you come up to Plattsburgh for a job, or vice versa, you have to remember to consider travel as part of your pricing, unless you have labor in that area, but you're more than likely bringing labor to the area if it requires on-site work. On the federal side, sometimes on the state side, you'll see a separate line item for travel, and they may give you a max amount. Something else to consider is if you're bidding a construction job, use an estimator. Have one on call. If you don't have the experience or expertise in government construction work, it's really, really important to have an estimator. This could be a software person at your company or a consultant you bring in. An estimator can come up with an effective pricing model based on the scope of work. And lastly, before you even look at requirements in a contract, you should conduct some pricing research. If you have never bid a government contract before, or have never been successful before because of pricing, this is something you need to do right away. You need a pricing baseline to be successful, and you can get this via conducting pricing research. So I have another poll that I will be launching. And this is just to see people are paying attention. So direct costs consists of all except all right, it looks like 60% have voted. I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So yes, fringe. And I can see that some people mark travel, and when I was practicing with my dad, he also denoted travel as his answer. But if travel is relating to the project itself, then it would be a direct cost. So I'll go next slide. So here's how you can do pricing research to have more effective bids. There's so much information out there that can point you in the right direction as to what your bid pricing should be. The first is to look at previous bids you've submitted. If you submitted a bid on a project, that's a good point of reference, regardless if you won or lost. Something else that you can look at is past commercial sales. They might not be an exact match, as commercial sales tend to be more profitable than government work, but it's a good starting point. And you can also look at what the government has paid in past contracts. And I'll show you some examples of how to do this in the following slides. Also, we talked about IDIQs. And did you know for GSA schedule holders and companies on New York State's centralized contracts, all of their pricing is online for anyone to look at. So if you wanted to look at what your competition was or who held GSA contracts, you can. And this can give you a good idea of what the government's maximum prices are. If you're bidding on something that has an existing contract in place, most cases you can find how much that previous contract was awarded for. You can compare that price and previous scope of work and get a good understanding of what they are buying things for as a baseline for your price. Here are some good websites to do some pricing research as well. So for New York contracts, there's openbooknewyork.com. Then there's also the New York State Contract Reporter. So the New York State Contract Reporter is free to become a member and can be used not only to view active bids, but to see their archives as well. And actually a week ago, there was an MWBE webinar that did a fantastic job at showing people how to navigate the New York State Contract Reporter. So reach out to Caitlin if you didn't attend and see if you can get a hold of that recording. Another thing to do is know your industry. So if you're new to your industry, many industries have associations who can help as a kind of mentor. And it's important to have a good handle on what a reasonable profit margin is in your industry, because if you go with too high profits on a government contract, you'll be outpriced. And if you go too low, you might be leaving money on the table. And then lastly, we went over this, you'll want to review your suppliers and their prices. So the next couple of slides, I'll show you some pricing research that I did. I went on to the New York State Contract Reporter to find all of these examples. So here's an example of an IFB, or invitation for bid, in Saratoga County for the construction of the southern extension of the Zim Smith Trail. So you can see here that an invitation to bid is a sealed bidding method of soliciting bids used when there is no substantial difference between the products or services that meet the specifications. So in this example, the engineering plans had already been created for the Zim Smith Trail. So they were looking for someone to construct it. So it went to the lowest responsible bidder that was awarded the contract. And then you can see over to the left, the final images of the trail. So if you're ever in Saratoga County, where I live, I definitely recommend taking a trip on the trail. Here, this next case study is another IFB for the City University of New York at Brooklyn College for Whitehead Hall roof replacement and associated asbestos abatement. And you can see over on the right-hand side, I got rid of the company names, but you can see all the different companies that bid on the project and their bid amounts. So polling question number 3, and this is based off of limited knowledge that you know about the IFB. Which company do you think was awarded this contract? And I'll go ahead and launch the poll. All right, I'll close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So this was actually a trick question. The answer is company C. So one would think that the answer would be A. However, both A and B were not deemed to be responsible bidders. Thus, even though they had lower bids than company C, they didn't win. And I would also like to point out the range in pricing. So it goes from 1.6 million to 3.9 million. And that's a really big range. And it shows me that company DD either didn't understand the requirements or just put a random number in, or maybe they're not from the area and they need to factor in more travel than other bidders. But 3.9 is a big difference from 2.2 million. And so if I were the companies, that had the higher bid amount, I would really take a look at my pricing because I was far off from the winning bid. And then here is my last pricing research example. This is an RFP, or request for proposal, and you can see there were two firms who submitted the bids, and NCCC was awarded the RFP. In this case, the lowest bidder was also the one who had the best value. So here's a list of questions to ask yourself as you're putting your pricing together. This isn't a comprehensive list, but if you can check off these boxes and you've been able to find this information, or you feel comfortable in the decisions you made revolving these questions, then you should be pretty competitive with your price. So some of these questions: did you do your research? Did you include other indirect costs? Is this work prevailing wage? Is your price realistic? So what if you bid on a contract and you didn't win, or you did win? There's a process where you can ask for a debrief from the contracting officer. There are some time limits to request a debrief, but it varies by agency level. Debriefs can be via phone, in person, or written as determined by the contracting officer. If it was a request for quote, the only thing you need to ask for is a bid sheet. And if you're bidding commodities or small pieces of work and there's a sealed bid, there would be a list you can request. If it's a local government, you can actually go to the bid opening, which I recommend post-COVID. So I think they're starting to allow that now. And at the bid opening, you can see if you are competitive in your pricing, because they'll actually list out all the companies that went after that contract and the prices that they bid. And you'll want to have some feedback to see where you went wrong. So a debrief is great. Was it your price? Was it your solution? The only way to find out is to ask for that information. And these discussions can give you insight into the strengths and weaknesses of your bid, and this can be very helpful in improving your process for future bids. Some of these bids are 100 pages long and you work hours and hours on them. It's nice to know, the feedback on them. If they ask you if you want a debrief to be formal or informal, I recommend doing it informally. So the reason is, some people ask for a debrief with the intention of gathering information with a purpose to protest, which is their right. But if it's informal, you can form a relationship with that contracting officer. And even if you win a contract, still ask for a debrief, especially if it's best value, because you'll want to know what worked, what didn't work. And then that way you can take that knowledge away with you. So remember, definitely ask for a debrief, but also don't argue. It's not the forum to do that, but rather a great opportunity to develop your relationship with the contracting officer. So to review what we talked about, what is a market-based or top-down approach, and what does that mean? So the first part is, you need to know your industry. This includes, what type of contract is it? Is it fixed price, time and material, cost reimbursement? You also need to know what your pricing units are: hours, widgets, phases. The second part is, you need to know your competitors. How are you different? What sets your business apart from your competition? Do you offer better prices or value than your competitors? And then the third part to a market-based top-down pricing strategy is, know current market conditions. You need to know if there is a surplus or shortage of your goods or service, and what are the overall economic trends. And then there's also the bottom-up approach, or cost-based approach. So the question we want to ask here is, how much does it cost me? And there are direct costs, or cost of goods sold, which includes labor, material, travel, other direct costs, and subcontractors, and then those indirect costs where most of the pricing issues occur. So have you properly calculated fringe, overhead, general administrative costs? So we reviewed the top-down market-based and bottom-up cost-based pricing strategies. However, there are some pitfalls of a single approach. And top-down only, if you look at what the market can bear and what other people are charging, and you come back and say that is what you are going to charge, your costs may exceed market price, or you may not be leaving enough room for your desired profit margin. But if you look at only the bottom-up approach, you might be leaving money on the table. What if you did bottom-up only, add up your costs, and then you see other companies are charging a lot more? Maybe you could charge more money and make more of a profit. This tends to happen to small service companies because they run a trim organization. So you'll want to take a hybrid approach to pricing, which combines both a top-down market-based strategy and a bottom-up cost-based pricing strategy. So my last polling question of the day. Let's see. Launch poll. Which is a pitfall of a top-down only single approach? So just a reminder, top-down is market-based approach. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So the answer is A. Your costs may exceed market price or not leave enough room for your desired profit margin. So to conclude, I'd like to share a save the date with you all. For the second time, PTACs from New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio have joined together to provide the opportunity for government buyers and sellers to meet in one of the largest online procurement events in the tri-state region. So connecting with contracting officers and getting some one-on-one time with the right people at the right agencies is key to growing your contracting business. And a matchmaker is like speed dating, but for businesses, government contracting officers, and prime contractors. Even if you're just starting up or not quite ready to do business with big names in public procurement, the matchmaker can connect you with smaller companies for potential contracting opportunities and teaming agreements. So this event is open to all businesses and there's no cost to attend. So save the date, December 7th and 8th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. At this time, we'd like to welcome some questions, and any questions we don't answer, we'll take offline, answer them, and email them back to you all. Also, please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest government contracting changes, and reach out to either me or IgniteU New York PTAC Program Manager, Laura Miller. She's also on the webinar, and become a PTAC client. And then if you're not located in our 17 county region, we can connect you with the PTAC that can service your business. So Caitlin, I'll open up to some questions if there are any.
Yes, there are a few. Laura answered several of them, so thanks, Laura, for chiming in. So the first question is, how can we access previous RFP pricing? I know that you had a slide with like Open Book New York and the Contract Reporter and all of that. If you wanted to, could you maybe go back to that slide?
Yeah, I can actually also too pull up the New York State Contract Reporter here.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so It's just nyscr.ny.gov, and I believe it's on one of the slides. And what you'll do is you'll log in or create a membership. You'll say you're not a robot, and then you'll log in. And so if you're not familiar with the New York State Contract Reporter, this here has active bids on it that you can search by term. But over here on the left-hand side, you can click on bid results and awards. It's taking a little while to load. And you can search here by keyword. You can search by agency. You can search by if they had bid results or awards. And then say you click on one, such as the first one, and here they do provide an award list. But say it didn't, it does have a contact person here. And so if the information isn't listed, which it should be, you could contact that contact person and ask for those results as well. I hope that answered the question, and I can go back to that slide too.
You had a few things on that slide too that are definitely very helpful.
Here we are. Oh, shoot. There we go.
Okay. Can attendees contact you for assistance with pricing?
Yes. So definitely sign up to be a PTAC client, and then we'll show you, who would buy what you sell, and then we can also walk through some market research together and be more industry specific. So that's something definitely we could help with.
Where can I find the GSA schedule / NYS OGS centralized contracts? Is there a website that you can direct me to?
Yes, so I can send that in our email, the links to that, and then with the GSA, send you the steps of what to click on and how to find that information. And the thing is, GSA contracts are very complicated, but we can walk you through that and assist you.
How can you get your first project, as often the RFPs require prior government experience?
Sorry, Caitlin, would you say that again?
Yeah. How can you get your first project, as often the RFPs require prior government contracting experience?
So a great way to get prior government contracting experience is to subcontract or team. That way, partner with an entity that does have past government experience and work with them. And the best ways, introduce yourself, share what your value is that you would bring to the team, and they would bring you on board, and then you can count that as some government contracting experience.
Can you help with pricing for a subcontract?
Yes. So we would meet at a later time, and we can definitely help you with that.
When you say market research, do you specifically mean research the data from the Contract Reporter and Open Book, or are there other sources?
So there are other sources. And so, for instance, on the slide here, there's federal sources such as FPDS or SAM.gov, and it's kind of a fun exercise. You can search by your NAICS codes, you can search by keywords, you can search by your competitors, and you just keep putting in different things into the search field, and they'll kind of all line up, and you'll start getting a better feel for the pricing and the contracts and your competitors that are out there. And that's something too that we could sit down one-on-one and walk through as well.
We have one in regards to the MWBE application. Do you assist with the MWBE application?
Yes, we do. Yep. So we can help you, and Caitlin, your group does a great job too of providing checklists and, you know, pre-application quizzes to make sure that you are eligible. And we definitely can help you gather your paperwork and then do the uploading process.
Yeah, and if anybody has a question on like a pending application, please feel free to reach out and I can direct you to our customer care team. Would market conditions also include things like green initiatives and buying trends? Do those trends factor into government buying?
Definitely. So for instance, right now, lumber is through the roof. It's expensive. So if you didn't factor that into your contract, well, now that's an additional price that your company will unfortunately need to eat. So it's sometimes difficult to predict the future, but if you can kind of keep track of the market forecast, that will definitely help with your pricing.
Can I get a copy of the pricing checklist?
Yes, so the pricing checklist will be part of this presentation, and I think, Caitlin, you'll be sending the whole presentation and the recording out following this?
Yes, I will.
Perfect.
If somebody's in an area that you don't cover, would you be able to put them in contact with someone in their region?
Definitely, yes. And then also too, in the slideshow, it was animated, but there is a map of all of New York State, and it showed the breakdown of PTAC territories, and there are PTACs all across the United States too. So if you're not located in New York, there's a PTAC for you. However, if you do see that you're in the blue area and there's listed no coverage, we will be able to connect you with a PTAC in the surrounding areas.
Would you be able to provide your email address, either like type it in the chat or I can even, do you want me to CC you on the recording and PowerPoint that I send out? Would that be easier?
That would be great, and then I can also put it into the chat as well.
Oh yeah, for your contact slide. Does PTAC have a list of estimators that you can forward?
So we are not allowed to provide any specific estimators. But if you Google them, or there's some software out there, we can discuss them with you as well and give you any feedback that we might have heard. But we're not allowed to provide one specific estimator.
All right, I think that we covered the questions. I'm just gonna put a poll up on your screen, just about your feedback from the presentation, if you want to just answer. And as this is up, if you have any additional questions, just feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Oh, we actually just got a question. If we are going in blind, how do we price competitively?
So there are resources out there that can assist with this. and I can do a little research and get you that information.
All right, I'm just gonna put the poll up. Oh. I'll let you all vote. Can everyone see the poll? Okay, I got a response. Guess you guys can see it. All right, while we're just waiting for this, the polling, I just wanted to thank Jenny and Laura for joining us today. I just have a couple of quick reminders. The recording will be emailed to everyone later today or early tomorrow. We also have another webinar coming up next Tuesday. The topic is doing business with CUNY. And we also, lastly, we have our Central New York MWBE Expo tomorrow. I can send information on that as well. And thank you all for joining today's webinar, and have a great rest of your day.